I thought the human was frozen in fear outside a predator den. Turns out she was waiting for her razorback cubs to come say hello. Vector had seen a lot of stupid things in his 30 cycles as a galactic safety inspector. He had witnessed Glorian miners trying to drill through active volcanoes. He had watched Pendrick scientists attempt to study black holes from what they considered a safe distance of 12 kilometers. He had even observed a Krellian diplomat try to negotiate peace with a sentient asteroid field. But this was something entirely new. The landing pad of Research Station Targon 7 was empty when his shuttle touched down, which was the first red flag. The second red flag was the eerie silence that greeted him as he stepped onto the metal platform. The third, fourth, and fifth red flags came in rapid succession. The security gate was wide open. The perimeter fence had a massive hole torn through it, and there were claw marks, deep ones, gouged into the reinforced walls of the main building. Fantastic, Vector muttered, his 3 eyes scanning the area with growing concern. His mandibles clicked nervously, a habit his mate always told him to stop. Just fantastic. Another human outpost that probably got everyone killed. He had read the reports about humans, of course. Everyone in the Galactic Federation had. The new species from the Deathworld called Earth. The ones who looked at radiation levels that would liquefy most species and said, quote, it's not that bad. The ones who voluntarily consumed poison for entertainment and called it spicy food. The ones who kept predators in their dwelling spaces and called them pets. Vector adjusted his scanner and started following the trail. The claw marks led away from the compound into the dense forest of Targon 7. This planet was classified as Extreme Danger Level 9, which meant it was home to approximately 473 different species that could kill a standard Federation citizen in under 30 seconds. The apex predator of this lovely nightmare world was the Razorback, and if Vector's scanner was reading correctly, he was walking straight toward a den of them. Razorbacks were not creatures you wanted to meet in a dark alley, or a bright alley, or any alley whatsoever really. They stood roughly 2 meters tall at the shoulder, stretched 4 meters from snout to tail, and had 6 legs that ended in claws sharp enough to shred titanium plating. Their hide was covered in razor-sharp quills that could be launched at prey with enough force to penetrate standard body armor. Oh, and did he mention the venom? Because there was venom. Lots of venom. The kind that caused paralysis, then excruciating pain, then death in that order. The Federation had lost 3 survey teams to Razorbacks before finally declaring Targon 7 off-limits to all but the most essential research, which is why there was supposed to be a fully armed 12-person security detail at this station. Vector pushed through the undergrowth, his weapon drawn, his heart's pounding in his chest. The scanner was going absolutely crazy now, indicating massive life signs just ahead. Multiple life signs. Big ones. He crept forward, moving as quietly as his exoskeleton would allow, and finally reached a small clearing. What he saw made all 3 of his eyes widen in horror. There, not 20 meters from a cave entrance that absolutely reeked of Razorback territory, was a human, a single solitary human, female, based on his limited understanding of their species. She was small, maybe 1.6 meters tall, with brown skin and dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail. She wore simple research clothes, a tan shirt, dark pants, and boots that looked far too inadequate for this terrain. And she was not moving. She stood perfectly still, her back to Vector facing the cave entrance. Her arms hung at her sides. Her breathing, from what he could detect, was shallow and controlled. "Oh no," Vector whispered, his translator barely processing the words. "Oh no. She is in shock. She is frozen with fear. This is bad. This is very bad." He had seen this before with other species, the overwhelming terror that comes from facing a predator so far above you on the food chain that your brain simply shuts down. The primitive response that says, "If I do not move, maybe it will not see me." It never worked. Vector raised his communicator, ready to call for an emergency extraction team, when he heard it. A low, rumbling growl from inside the cave. The kind of growl that said, "I know you are there, and I am deciding whether you are worth the effort of killing." The human still did not move. "Hang on," Vector called out, probably too loudly, definitely too panicked. "Do not move. I repeat, do not move. I am activating emergency protocols. Extraction in 30 seconds. His fingers fumbled with the emergency beacon on his belt. Standard procedure for extreme danger level 9 situations. Activate beacon. Create distraction. Grab the frozen idiot. And run like your life depends on it. Because it absolutely does. The human turned her head slightly, just enough that Vector could see her profile. She was smiling. Wait. She was smiling? Whoa, hey there, the human called out, holding up both hands in what Vector assumed was a surrender gesture. You must be the inspector. I'm Dr. Jenny Brennan, xenobiology specialist. Welcome to Targon Set. Her tone was cheerful. Cheerful, like she was greeting him at a social gathering and not standing in front of a cave full of death. Dr. Brennan, Vector shouted, his voice modulator cranking up the volume. Step away from the cave. Slowly. I have activated emergency extraction. The shuttle will be here in 25 seconds. Jenny's smile faltered, replaced by genuine confusion. Wait. What? Why would we need extraction? Why would they need extraction? Why would they need extraction? Was this human serious right now? Because you are standing in front of a razorback den. Vector's mandibles were clicking so fast they sounded like maracas. Because you are about to be torn apart by one of the most dangerous predators in this quadrant. Because I am trying to save your life. Oh. Jenny laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed through the clearing like bells, which was probably going to attract every predator within 5 kilometers. Oh no, you've got it all wrong. I'm not in danger. This is my research site. Vector's emergency beacon was flashing red, the extraction shuttle already launching from his ship in orbit. He had maybe 15 seconds before it arrived with enough firepower to level this entire forest section. Your research site, Vector repeated slowly, his translator double-checking to make sure it had processed her words correctly. Your research site is a razorback den. Well, yeah, Jenny said. Like this was the most reasonable thing in the universe. How else am I supposed to study them? From a distance, Vector shrieked. With cameras, with drones, with extremely powerful telescopes from orbit. Jenny opened her mouth to respond, but then her attention shifted to something behind Vector. Her eyes lit up with what could only be described as delight. Oh, perfect timing, she said. Here come the boys. The boys? The boys? Vector spun around, his weapon raised, and felt his respiratory system nearly shut down. 3 razorbacks were emerging from the tree line. Young ones, but still massive. Each one was easily the size of a Federation cargo hauler, their quills bristling in the afternoon light, their 6 legs moving with that predatory grace that spoke of millions of years of evolution perfecting the art of murder. Stay behind me, Vector commanded, positioning himself between Jenny and the approaching predators. His weapon hummed to life, charging up a plasma burst that could theoretically stop one of these creatures. Theoretically being the key word. The extraction shuttle screamed overhead, its weapon systems locking onto the razorbacks. No. Jenny suddenly moved, and not away from the danger. She moved around Vector, waving her arms at the sky. Stand down. Stand down. Do not fire. Dr. Brennan, get back. Vector grabbed for her arm, but she was surprisingly quick. The 3 razorback cubs, because apparently that is what they were, had stopped their advance. They sat down on their haunches, their multiple eyes fixed on Jenny, their tails swishing back and forth, like they were waiting for something. Cancel the extraction. Jenny was practically jumping now, still waving at the shuttle. Cancel it. Everything is fine.
Nothing about this was fine. Nothing about this was even in the same galaxy as fine.
The lead cub, the one with a distinctive white patch on its snout, made a sound. Not a growl, not a roar, something that almost sounded like a chirp, a questioning chirp. Hey, Spike! Jenny's voice shifted to something Vector had heard human parents use with their offspring. Soft, warm, affectionate. Yes, I see you. Come here, buddy. Vector's weapon dropped slightly. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence, trying to process what they were seeing. The razorback cub named Spike stood up and began walking toward Jenny. Not stalking. Not charging. Walking. With what almost looked like excitement. Dr. Brennan, Vector said quietly, his voice barely functioning. Please tell me you are not about to do what I think you are about to do. Jenny looked back at him, that same bright smile on her face. What, greet the cubs? Of course I am. It's been almost 3 hours since I saw them last. They probably think I abandoned them. The extraction shuttle was hovering above them, waiting for orders. Vector could hear the pilot's frantic voice through his communicator, asking for confirmation, asking for status, asking if they should open fire. All 3 of Vector's eyes remained locked on the scene before him. The razorback cub called Spike reached Jenny and immediately pressed its massive head against her chest, nearly knocking her over. And Jenny? Jenny wrapped her arms around its neck and scratched behind its ears. Good boy, she cooed. Yes. You are, yes. You are such a good boy. Vector's weapon clattered to the ground. The other two cubs, apparently tired of waiting for their turn, bounded forward with all the grace of small asteroids. They converged on Jenny from both sides, tails wagging, quills rattling with what Vector's brain absolutely refused to interpret as happiness. Dash, Scrapper. Yes. Hello. Jenny laughed as she was nearly bowled over by 600 kilograms of apex predator enthusiasm. I missed you too. I was only gone for a little bit. Vector stood frozen, his weapon at his feet, his minds, all three of them, struggling to comprehend the scene unfolding before him. One of the cubs, the smallest one that Jenny had called Scrapper, rolled onto its back, exposing its vulnerable belly, all 6 legs kicking in the air. And then Jenny did something that made Vector's respiratory sparkles completely seize up. She knelt down and rubbed the cub's belly. The razorback's back leg thumped against the ground in apparent bliss, its forked tongue lolling out of its mouth. The quills that should have been piercing Jenny's hands had flattened against its hide, harmless as grass. Okay, Vector said to no one in particular, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I have clearly suffered a neural breakdown. That is the only explanation. The shuttle crash landed, I hit my head, and now I am hallucinating my death before it happens. This is fine. This is totally fine. Jenny looked up from her belly-rubbing duties, her expression shifting to something like concern. Oh hey, are you all right? You look a little shaky. How long? Vector managed to croak out. How long have you been? And I cannot believe I am asking this, friends with these killing machines. 6 months, Jenny said brightly, giving Scrapper one final pat before standing up. Spike immediately pressed against her side, and she leaned into him like he was a piece of furniture designed for that exact purpose. It took about 3 months to gain the cub's trust, another 2 to get comfortable with Mama, and the last month has been pure research bliss. 6 months. She had been here for 6 months, living with razorbacks, studying them, petting them. Explain, Vector said flatly. Explain right now how any of this is possible, because every piece of data we have on razorbacks says they are aggressive, territorial, and will attack anything that moves within 50 meters of their den. Jenny's face lit up with that particular expression researchers get when someone asks them about their work. Oh, that's the beautiful part. They are territorial, absolutely, but they're also incredibly intelligent and social. When I first arrived, I spent 2 weeks just observing from a distance, learning their patterns, their communication signals, their body language. She gestured to Dash, who had plopped down next to her and was currently trying to chew on her bootlaces. Then I started leaving food offerings at the edge of their territory. Not too close, just enough to show I wasn't a threat. It took 3 weeks before Mama even acknowledged the gifts. Another 2 before she let me get within visual range without posturing. Vector's training kicked in despite his shock. You approached an adult razorback, voluntarily. Well, yeah, but very slowly and very carefully, Jenny said, like this was a completely rational course of action. The cubs were curious about me first, actually. This little guy, she ruffled Scrapper's head quills, which apparently was something you could just do now, tried to steal my scanning equipment one day. That's when I realized they had play behaviors similar to Earth canines. Earth canines, Vector repeated. His mandibles had stopped clicking, mainly because his entire jaw had gone numb. Dogs. We domesticated wolves, thousands of years ago. Turned some of the most efficient pack predators on our planet into our best friends. Jenny's smile was fond, nostalgic. Same basic principle here. Patience, respect, understanding their needs and showing them you're not a threat. Plus, lots of treats. These guys love the dried Kelnar fish from the station supplies. In Vector's species, fear was a chemical reaction. You encountered a predator. Your body flooded with hormones. You either fought, fled, or froze. It was biological, automatic, universal, or so he had thought. Your species, Vector said slowly, piecing together the implications, does not have the same fear response as the rest of the galaxy. Oh, we have fear, Jenny corrected, scratching behind Spike's ear ridge. The massive cub leaned into her touch, eyes half closed in contentment. We're just really good at overriding it when we're curious about something. A shadow passed over the clearing, massive and fast. Vector looked up and felt his blood turn to ice. Perched on an outcropping above the cave entrance, watching the entire scene with eyes that glowed like molten copper, was the mother razorback. She was enormous, easily twice the size of her offspring, covered in scars that spoke of decades of survival. Her quills were longer, sharper, darker. Her jaw could easily fit Vecthor's entire torso inside it, with room to spare. She was looking directly at Jenny. "Oh, don't worry about Luna," Jenny said, following his gaze. "She's just checking in, making sure her babies are safe." "Luna," Vecthor whispered. "You named the mother Luna. Pretty name, right? She has this beautiful silver stripe down her back that shows up in the moonlight." The creature that had killed 17 Federation survey members over the past decade was named Luna, and she was, according to this insane human, just checking on her babies. Vecthor made a decision right then and there. When he got back to his ship, he was writing a report that would completely rewrite the Federation's understanding of humans. Assuming he survived the next 5 minutes, Luna descended from her perch with movements that were far too graceful for something her size. Each step was calculated, powerful, and completely silent despite her massive bulk. Vecthor's hand twitched toward his dropped weapon, but Jenny caught his eye and shook her head firmly. "Don't," she said simply. "Trust me." Trust her? Trust the human who was casually standing in the middle of 3 juvenile apex predators while their mother approached. That was asking a lot. But then again, he was still alive, which was more than he had expected 5 minutes ago. Luna reached the clearing and made a sound, a low rumble that Vecthor felt in his bones. The 3 cubs immediately perked up, their attention shifting from Jenny to their mother. "Hey, gorgeous," Jenny said, her voice warm and respectful. "Your babies have been perfect angels today." The mother Razorback's eyes fixed on Jenny, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Vecthor's 3 hearts hammered against his ribs, each one beating out a different rhythm of terror. Then Luna lowered her massive head and gently, almost delicately, bumped it against Jenny's shoulder. Jenny reached up and placed her hand on Luna's snout right between her eyes in what had to be the most trusting gesture Vecthor had ever witnessed. "Good girl," Jenny whispered. Vecthor's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the forest floor, his weapon forgotten, his emergency beacon still flashing uselessly on his belt. "I do not understand," he said, and he hated how small his voice sounded. "I do not understand any of this. My species, we evolved as prey. We see a predator. We run. We hide. We do anything except walk up to it and scratch behind its ears." Jenny looked over at him, and something in her expression softened. She gave Luna one final pat, and walked over to where Vecthor sat, the cubs trailing behind her like oversized puppies. "Can I sit?" she asked. Vecthor gestured weakly at the ground. Jenny settled down cross-legged next to him, Scrapper immediately climbing into her lap despite being far too large for such things. She grunted under the weight but didn't push him away. "Humans evolved alongside predators," Jenny began, her voice taking on a lecture tone that was somehow comforting in its familiarity. "Big cats, bears, wolves, crocodiles. We didn't have natural armor like some species. No venom, no claws, no quills. We were slow, relatively weak, and absolutely on the menu for dozens of species. So you learn to fear them," Vecthor said. "Like sensible creatures. We learn to understand them." Jenny corrected. "There's a difference. Fear keeps you alive in the short term. Sure, but understanding lets you change the game entirely. We learned predator body language, their hunting patterns, their social structure. We learned that most predators don't actually want to fight if they don't have to. Fighting is risky, even for an apex predator. Injuries mean death in the wild." Spike had wandered over and was currently sniffing Vecthor's leg with great interest. Vecthor held perfectly still, barely breathing. "So we developed this strategy," Jenny continued, absently stroking Scrapper's head. "Instead of running, we observed. Instead of fighting, we negotiated. We left offerings, we showed respect. We demonstrated we weren't threats. And sometimes, just sometimes, we formed partnerships." "Partnerships with predators," Vecthor said. "That sounds insane," says the guy currently being investigated by a Razorback cub who's decided you smell interesting. Jenny grinned. Spike had indeed moved closer, his nose now inches from Vecthor's face. Vecthor could see every sharp tooth in that massive jaw, could smell the distinct metallic scent of the venom glands, could count each individual quill. "What do I do?" Vecthor asked, his voice climbing several octaves. "Stay calm, let him sniff you, and whatever you do, don't make sudden movements," Jenny instructed. "He's just curious. You're probably the first person other than me he's seen up close." Spike's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air around Vecthor. Then, apparently satisfied with his investigation, the cub made a pleased chirping sound and headbutted Vecthor's chest, just like he had done to Jenny. "Vecthor, On pure instinct reached up and touched the cub's head. The quills were smooth under his hand, lying flat, almost soft. Spike leaned into the touch, his eyes closing, a purring rumble starting in his chest. "Oh no," Vector whispered. "Oh no, I am petting it. Why am I petting it?" "Because he's adorable and you know it," Jenny said smugly. Before Vector could respond, Dash decided he wanted attention too, and launched himself at Jenny with enough force to knock her flat on her back. She let out a startled laugh as 600 kilograms of predator proceeded to lick her face with enthusiasm. "Dash, buddy. Seriously." Jenny giggled, trying to push his snout away. "Your breath smells like dead Kelnar fish." Scrapper, not wanting to be left out, pounced on Dash, and suddenly all three cubs were wrestling in a tangle of legs, tails, and quills. Jenny was somewhere in the middle of it all, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Luna watched from a few meters away, her expression, if Vector was reading it correctly, looking remarkably like maternal exasperation. "They play rough," Vector observed, watching as Scrapper accidentally kicked Jenny in the ribs hard enough that he heard the impact. "Yeah, they forget I'm not covered in armor sometimes," Jenny wheezed, finally extricating herself from the pile. She had leaves in her hair, dirt on her face, and a scratch on her arm that was bleeding slightly. "But they're learning. They're much gentler than they were 3 months ago." "You are teaching apex predators to be gentle with you," Vector said, still petting Spike, who had apparently decided Vector was now his new friend. "You are teaching them like they are children." "They are children," Jenny pointed out. "Just really big, really toothy children." Vector watched the cubs play, watched Luna watching them, watched Jenny treat these killing machines like they were precious and worthy of love. And suddenly, he understood. Humans didn't conquer their world by being the strongest or the fastest or the most well-armed. They conquered it by befriending their nightmares, by turning their predators into partners, by refusing to accept that fear was the only option. They were terrifying, not because they were warriors but because they saw something that wanted to kill them and thought, "I wonder if we could be friends." "Your species is completely insane," Vector said with something that might have been admiration. Jenny grinned. "Yeah, we get that a lot." Luna had been content to observe from a distance while her cubs played, but now she stood up, her full height making Vector realize just how small he really was in the grand scheme of the universe. She stretched, each of her 6 legs extending in sequence, her spine arching, her quills rising and falling in a wave pattern that caught the light like deadly crystal. Then she started walking toward them. Not the casual approach from before. This was purposeful, direct, and Vector's every survival instinct started screaming at volumes that should have been physically impossible. Vector said, his hand moving toward his weapon again. "Dr. Brennan, is this normal?" Jenny looked up from where Scrapper was trying to chew on her bootlace again. "Oh yeah, it's almost feeding time. She's probably hungry." Feeding time. The mother razorback was approaching because it was feeding time. Vector's weapon was in his hand before he consciously decided to pick it up. His fingers found the activation stud, the plasma coils humming to life with a sound that cut through the clearing like a warning siren. All 3 cubs froze. Their playful demeanor evaporated instantly, replaced by something alert, defensive. Spike moved to position himself between Vector and Jenny, his quills rising, his lips pulling back to reveal rows of teeth that looked like they belonged in a weapons factory. Luna's approach accelerated.
"Weapon down!"
Jenny's voice cracked like a whip, all traces of her earlier warmth gone. "Weapon down right now." "Are you out of your mind?" Vector kept the weapon raised, his targeting system locking onto Luna's center mass. "She is charging. This is an attack posture." "No, it's a protective posture, you idiot." Jenny was on her feet now, positioning herself between Vector and the rapidly approaching mother razorback. "You just activated a weapon near her babies. Put it down." Luna was closing the distance fast, each stride covering 3 meters, her eyes locked on Vector with an intensity that promised violence. She was now 10 meters away, 8 meters, 6 meters. Vector's finger tightened on the trigger. "Please," Jenny said, and the genuine desperation in her voice cut through his panic. "Please trust me. Put the weapon down." 4 meters. Every piece of training, every survival instinct, every rational thought in Vector's head told him to fire. 1 shot, center mass, maximum power. It might not kill her, but it would give them time to run. 2 meters. Vector dropped the weapon. Luna reached them in the next heartbeat, her massive form filling Vector's entire field of vision. He squeezed all 3 eyes shut, waiting for the pain, waiting for the venom, waiting for the end. He heard Jenny's voice, soft and soothing. It's okay, Luna. He's a friend. He didn't know. It's okay, Mama. Your babies are safe. Vector felt hot breath on his face, smelled the distinct scent of predator, felt the vibration of a growl that resonated in his chest cavity. Then he felt something else, something wet and rough, dragging across his face. Vector opened one eye, then another, then the third. Luna was licking him. The apex predator of Targon 7, the creature responsible for 17 confirmed Federation deaths, the living nightmare that made grown soldiers freeze as assignments to this planet, was currently giving Vector what could only be described as a kiss. See? Jenny said, her hand resting on Luna's shoulder. She's just saying hello. She does this. It's a scent marking thing, basically claiming you as part of the territory. I am being claimed, Vector said faintly. By a razorback. I am now property of a razorback. Think of it more like you've been accepted into the family, Jenny offered. Luna finished her greeting and moved to Jenny, pressing her enormous head against the human's torso with enough force that Jenny stumbled backward, but she was laughing, her arms wrapping around as much of Luna's neck as she could reach. Yes, I know you're hungry, Jenny cooed, scratching under Luna's jaw in a spot that made the predator's back leg kick reflexively. Give me 2 seconds and I'll get the food. Jenny walked over to a storage container that Vector hadn't even noticed before, partially hidden in the undergrowth. She popped it open and pulled out what looked like several kilograms of raw meat, frozen protein blocks, and those dried fish she had mentioned earlier. Okay, babies, line up, Jenny called out. The 3 cubs immediately abandoned whatever they were doing and sat in a neat row, tails swishing, eyes fixed on the food with laser focus. Good boys, Jenny praised, tossing each of them a chunk of meat. Spike, gentle, dash, don't gulp, scrap or chew please. Luna sat last, her posture regal, patient, waiting for her turn. Jenny approached the mother razorback with the largest portion of food, but she didn't just throw it, she hand-fed it, piece by piece, while Luna ate with surprising delicacy from her palms. This is the core of it, Jenny explained, glancing at Vector while Luna chewed. Respect, consistency and trust. I provide for them, they protect me. It's mutual. They know I'll never hurt them, and I know they'll never hurt me. How can you know that? Vector asked. How can you possibly know that with certainty? Jenny smiled, running her hand along Luna's scarred snout. Because 3 months ago, I got sick. Really sick. Fever, delirium, couldn't move. I collapsed about 100 meters from here. She pointed toward the cave entrance. Luna found me. She could have killed me right there. Easy meal. Instead, she dragged me into the cave, kept me warm, brought me water in her mouth. The cubs stayed with me the whole time, keeping watch. When I finally recovered 2 days later, I realized something. Jenny looked directly at Vector, her expression serious. She saved my life, not because she had to, not because I could do anything for her at that moment. She saved me because somewhere along the way, during all those weeks of patience and offerings and respect, I had stopped being potential prey and started being part of her pack. Luna had finished eating. She lowered her head again, this time resting it on top of Jenny's head in a gesture that was unmistakably affectionate. We're family, Jenny said simply, and family takes care of each other. Vector sat there, surrounded by 4 razorbacks and 1 impossible human, and felt every certainty he had ever held about the universe crumble into dust. Your species, he said slowly, should not exist. Everything about you defies logic, defies biology, defies common sense. Yeah, Jenny agreed cheerfully, giving Luna one final pat. But we do exist, and we're pretty good at making friends. Spike wandered back over to Vector and flopped down next to him, resting his massive head on Vector's lap. Vector, because apparently he had completely surrendered to the insanity of this situation, started petting him again. I am petting a razorback, he muttered. I am sitting in a clearing on Targon 7, petting a razorback cub, while his mother watches approvingly. This is my life now. Could be worse, Jenny pointed out. How? Vector demanded. How could this possibly be worse? Jenny grinned. You could be filling out the incident report explaining all this to your superiors. Vector's mandibles clicked in what might have been the alien equivalent of a groan. She had a point. The sun was starting to set over Targon 7, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange that would have been beautiful if Vector's brain wasn't still trying to process the complete upheaval of his understanding of reality. He sat against a tree, his emergency beacon finally deactivated, his weapon safely stored away, watching Jenny play what appeared to be a game of chase with all 3 cubs. They were being remarkably gentle with her now, clearly understanding that their human friend was fragile compared to them. When Dash accidentally knocked her over, he immediately backed off, making worried chirping sounds until Jenny laughed and reassured him she was fine. Luna lay next to Vector, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her massive body. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was almost comfortable. "You know," Jenny said, jogging back over and collapsing onto the ground with a satisfied exhale, "this isn't even the weirdest human-predator friendship in our history." Vector turned one eye toward her. "Please, enlighten me. I am clearly suffering from some sort of educational deficit regarding your species." Jenny grinned, catching her breath. "Okay, so back on Earth, there was this guy who lived with grizzly bears, giant predators, could kill a human with one swipe. He spent 13 summers living among them, filming them becoming part of their world. Or the woman who swam with great white sharks, massive ocean predators with rows of teeth, no cage, just her and the sharks. She proved they weren't mindless killing machines." "What happened to these people?" Vector asked, not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Well, the bear guy eventually got killed by a bear," Jenny admitted. "But not one of his bears. A different one. One he didn't know. It proved his point, actually. The bears he had relationships with never hurt him. Trust and respect go both ways." "That is a terrible example of success," Vector pointed out. "Fair," Jenny conceded. "But the shark woman is still alive and doing amazing work. And there are thousands of other examples. We've befriended wolves, turned them into dogs. We've domesticated cats, horses, even some reptiles and birds of prey. We keep animals that could kill us in our homes, sleep next to them, let our children play with them." Scrapper had wandered over and was now attempting to climb into Jenny's lap again despite being far too large. She accommodated him anyway, wrapping her arms around his neck. "The Federation has been studying humans for 2 years now," Vector said quietly. "Trying to understand you, trying to predict how you'll integrate into galactic society. We've been approaching it all wrong, haven't we?" "How so?" Jenny asked. "We've been looking at your technology, your warfare capabilities, your population growth, your resource consumption." Vector gestured at the scene around them. "But this is what makes you dangerous. Not your weapons. Your absolute refusal to accept that some things cannot be befriended." Jenny considered this, her hand still stroking Scrapper's quills. "I wouldn't say it's a refusal. It's more like optimism backed by stubbornness. We see a challenge and think, why not try? What's the worst that could happen?" "Death," Vector said flatly. "Death is usually the worst that could happen." "Sure, but what's the best that could happen?" Jenny countered. "We gain a friend. We learn something new about the universe. We prove that connection is possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. To us, that's worth the risk." Vector pulled out his datapad, staring at the blank report screen. "I am going to have to explain all of this to the Galactic Council. I am going to have to tell them that every protocol we have regarding human limitations is fundamentally flawed, that we've been treating humans like they're fragile when really they're just operating on a completely different survival strategy than the rest of us." "What are you going to tell them?" Jenny asked. Vector began typing, his multiple fingers moving across the keys with increasing confidence. "I am going to tell them the truth. That humans did not conquer their world through superior strength or advanced weaponry. They conquered it by refusing to see any creature as permanently hostile. They conquered it through empathy, patience, and a truly baffling willingness to pet things that want to eat them." He paused, looking at Luna, who had rolled onto her side and was currently having her belly scratched by Jenny's foot. "I am going to recommend we completely revise our danger assessments for human research stations. Not because humans are in less danger than we thought, but because they operate under different definitions of danger entirely. What we call suicidal, they call scientific inquiry. What we call impossible, they call interesting." "That's pretty accurate," Jenny agreed. Vector saved his report and looked at Jenny seriously. "The council is going to want to meet you. They are going to want to understand how you did this. They are going to want to know if this can be replicated." "Can't replicate heart," Jenny said simply. "Can't teach someone to care about something they're afraid of. You either have that curiosity or you don't." Spike had rejoined the group, and now all 3 cubs were piled around Jenny and Vector, creating a living fortress of scales, quills, and contentment. Luna had moved closer as well, completing the circle. "We're not conquerors," Jenny said softly, looking at each of the Razorbacks in turn. "We're bridge builders. We find what's different and scary and dangerous, and we try to understand it. Sometimes we fail, sometimes spectacularly, but when we succeed, when we make that connection, We don't just gain knowledge, we gain family. Vector looked around at the scene, at the sunset painting everything in golden light, at the predators who should have killed them both but were instead napping peacefully, at the small human woman who had accomplished something the Federation would have deemed impossible. I have been a safety inspector for 30 cycles, Vector said. I have seen hundreds of species, thousands of planets, countless examples of life adapting to survive. But I have never seen anything like this. I have never seen a species that doesn't just survive alongside their predators but actively seeks to befriend them. Maybe that's our superpower, Jenny suggested. Not that we're the strongest or the smartest, but we're really good at making friends with things that want to kill us. That is the most terrifying superpower I have ever heard of, Vector said. Yeah, Jenny laughed. We get that a lot too. As the last light faded from the sky, Vector watched Scrapper try to catch his own tail, watched Dash and Spike wrestle with the gentle intensity of siblings, watched Luna keep one eye open and trained on her family with unmistakable affection. And he watched Jenny, the impossible human, laugh with pure joy as Scrapper finally caught his tail and immediately fell over in surprise. The galaxy was going to have to make room for humanity, Vector realized. Not because they demanded it through force, but because they would simply befriend enough of the galaxy's nightmares that refusing them would become impossible. They didn't conquer through fear, they conquered through connection. And that, Vector thought as Spike's head settled into his lap once more, was far more powerful than any weapon the Federation had ever created. Hey Vector, Jenny called out. Same time tomorrow? Luna's been wanting to introduce me to her sister. Vector's three eyes widened. There are more of them? Jenny's grin was absolutely wicked. Welcome to Targon 7, Inspector. Where every day is an adventure, and every predator is just a friend you haven't made yet. Vector looked down at his datapad, then at the cubs, then back at Jenny. He was definitely going to need a bigger report.